We're on the Gemara on the bottom of Daf Ayin, two lines from the bottom. So the Gemara here is discussing the halacha of a case of a person that died on Shabbos in a chotzer. So Yoirish, it started in the bottom of Daf Ayin Amid Aleph, where the Ibaya was about a Yoirish, Mao she yivatel b'Shabbos. Right, so Rav Nachman said, Ani oimim mevatel. Rav Nachman says that a Yoirish could do bittul rishus on Shabbos, even though before Shabbos he wasn't able to make an Erev Chatzeres b'chlal. But now he yash in this place, and he's living here in the Chotzer. He didn't participate with the Erev Chatzeres, obviously, but he could be mevatel on Shabbos. So the Gemara asks a question on this. Toshema Yisrael v'ger shruyim b'megura achas. A Yid and a Ger are both living in one megura, in one dwelling. Rashi here says they're living in one dwelling, but there's different rooms, and therefore they have different rooms that are opened into the Chatzer, and they have to make an Erev Chatzeres together. Umeis Ger mebayid yom. Now this Ger died before Shabbos. Now obviously the Ger, the reason why it's mentioning here Ger is because he doesn't have any Yoirish. So now what happens? Who's going to come and take his place? So someone could come and take, anybody could come and take possession of the place of the Ger. So the Braisa says, Af al pi shehichzik Yisrael achar b'nechasav. Even if a Yid came and took possession of his place in this Chatzer, in this house that's open to this Chatzer, Oyser, he asks the other Yid to carry out into the Chatzer without an Erev Chatzeres. Now, what it says in the Braisa here makes sense if you think about it. Besides the words Afal Pi, the point is the Ger is not here. Now another Yid comes and takes his place, so therefore they have to make an Erev Chatzeres. This Yid and now this other Yid that came and took his place together, they have to make an Erev Chatzeres. The question is, why does the Braisa say Afal Pi? Even though it shouldn't, you should read the Braisa Hichzik Yisrael Achar b'nechasav. So therefore, Oyser, what's the Afal Pi? So the Gemara will ask this question and explain. Let's go to the next part of the Braisa. Mi shechashecha. If the Yid comes and was machzik, if the Ger passed away after Shabbos began, so he made an Erev Chatzeres and he passed away after Shabbos began. Afal pi sheloi hichzik Yisrael acher. Even if another Yid was not machzik in his place, eina Oyser. He does not aser on the other Yid that's there because he passed away on Shabbos. This goes back really to what we learned yesterday. Once you have an Erev Chatzeres that was made in the beginning of Shabbos and it was mutter, it's mutter for the rest of Shabbos. The fact that he passed away in the middle of Shabbos doesn't change the status of the Erev Chatzeres. So again, the lashon of the Braisa Afal Pi is not so clear. So the Gemara is going to explain this now. Before it comes to bringing the Raya, but first the Gemara explains the lashon of the Braisa. Both times it says Afal Pi, it's not very clear why it's using that lashon. So the Gemara, first the Reisha. Ha gufa kashya. The question is on the lashon of the Reisha. Amrit mibayid yom, you're saying that if this Ger passed away before Shabbos, Afal Pi shehichzik, even if a Yid came and was machzik in this place, he's going to aser on the other person that's there. So why does it say Afal Pi? Does that mean v'loi mi boye ki loi hichzik? That if another Yid did not come and take the place of the Ger, then for sure he would aser? Why adarabba? It's on the contrary. Ki loi hichzik loi asar. If nobody else was machzik there, so now one Yid is living there alone. So there's no need for an Erev Chatzeres. Why are you saying that even though he was machzik, so now he asers? It's mashma that if no one was machzik there after the Ger passed away, it's also aser. Why? Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, you're right, you can't read the Braisa this way. The way you have to read the Braisa is Afal Pi sheloi hichzik. That even though nobody was machzik, nevertheless, he still asers. That's how you have to read the Braisa. Okay, but the Gemara asks right away, but that's not what it says. V'ho Afal Pi shehichzik etani. In the Braisa it says, even though a Yid was machzik. So you can't change it's time to change the gears of the Braisa, the Gemara doesn't accept this. So the Gemara explains now, Hachi ka'ama. The way to read the pshat in the Braisa is as follows. Afal pi shaloi hichzik mibayid yom. This Yid that came and took the place of the Ger that died, he was not machzik before Shabbos. Ela mishachashecha. He came and took his place after Shabbos began. Kivin the Havale lahachzik miboid yoim. Since this place where the ger was open for anybody to come and be machzik from before Shabbos. That's what the Braisa means when it says Afa Pisha Hichzik Yisrael Acha, means it was open for anybody to come and be machzik from before Shabbos. Oyser, he's going to aser when he's machzik on Shabbos itself. What's the chiddush of this Braisa? So Rashi explains that usually we say that if when Shabbos entered it was a matzav that it was mutter, that had to continue the entire Shabbos. So over here, when Shabbos began, it was a place which was mutter. There was only one Yid that was living there. There was no one else there. So l'chayr it should be mutter for the rest of Shabbos. However, over here the case is different. When you have a situation where there's just one person living there, there's nobody else here, b'chlal. Or you have a situation where they already made a native chatzeres, so then I say that had to continue the entire Shabbos. This case, however, the Braisa is being mechadish is different. It's a heter, which is a shaky situation. Why? Because a ger died. Somebody is going to come and be machzik in his place. Somebody is going to enter there. No one got a chance yet to move in, but it's a matter of time before someone's going to move in. So Hagam, when Shabbos came in, it was open and no one else was there yet, but we know that someone's going to come in, and very possible even during Shabbos someone's going to come in. Exactly. Someone wants to chap it as early as possible. So therefore, even though there was a matzav of a heter when Shabbos came in, it's considered to be a place that was open, and we knew that someone else is going to come in. That heter does not continue the rest of Shabbos. That's what the Braisa is being mechadish. Rashi calls it. The lashon of Rashi is that this rishus, if you look at towards the last line of Rashi, Afa Pishaloi Hichsik, that Rashi says Nimtzis rishuzu tluya va'omedes. It's not considered to be a situation that it's a clear heter when Shabbos came in, because this is an open place that someone's going to move in here.
Is Kenyan on Shabbos for the Yid?
If he moves in there, he's kind of the Nichse Ager, yeah. Whether he's allowed to, whether he's not, but if he moves in there on Shabbos, it becomes his. So that's the first half of the Braisa. Now the Gemara goes to the next half of the Braisa. What did it say? Mishach HaShecha, if the Ger died on Shabbos itself, Afal pi shaloi hichzik Yisrael acher, even if nobody moved in, eina oiser, he doesn't ask the place. So again, the Gemara asks, why does it say Afal pi shaloi hichzik? Afal pi shaloi hichzik Yisrael acher, it's mashma, nobody moved in, and that's why he doesn't aser, v'loi mi boyi ki hichzik. Needless to say that if he was machzik, Adarabah, ki hichzik asa, there would be more of a svara if somebody was machzik there that you should aser, and there you should be mechadish that even though someone was machzik, still he doesn't aser. And so what's the basis of this half of the Braisa? That once there was a heter when Shabbos came in, because this ger made an erev chatzeres. And there was a clear heter. Over here, he made a proper erev chatzeres. He died in the middle of Shabbos. So over here, once there was a clear heter when Shabbos came in, so you don't ask later. But why is the Braisa saying the chiddush that the heter is, even though no one was machzik? You should say fakar. The heter is, even though someone else moves in, and he did not make an erev chatzeres, still that heter remains. So the lashon of the Braisa seems to be upside down. So the Gemara again says, Omer Rav Papa, Eime Aval Pisha Hichzik. Okay, so we have to change the Braisa. Even though someone was machzik in the middle of Shabbos, still the heter of the ger that made an erev chatzeres remains. Again, the Gemara asks, but v'ha Aval Pisha Shaloi Hichzik etani. In the Braisa it says, even though nobody was machzik, so you can't change the gears of the Braisa. So the Gemara explains, Hachi Kama. So the pshat in the Braisa is as follows. Even though he was machzik after Shabbos began, since he couldn't be machzik from before Shabbos, he doesn't ask. So when the Braisa uses the lashon afal pisha loy hichzik Yisrael, it's going on before Shabbos. He was machzik on Shabbos. The Braisa is saying this Yid moved in on Shabbos, and even though he now moved in on Shabbos and he didn't make an erev chatzeres, he does not aser. Why does the Braisa use the lashon afal pisha loy hichzik? The Braisa is explaining, even though he couldn't be machzik before Shabbos, even the loy havalela hachzik mebayid yaim eina iser. The ger was there. The ger made the erev chatzeres, and therefore Shabbos began with a proper heter. If the Shabbos starts with a proper heter, that heter continues the whole Shabbos. So basically, the conclusion of the whole Gemara here is the point of this brayso is to teach you this halacha that we learned, that once Shabbos starts beheter, that heter continues the entire Shabbos, is only if you have a solid heter. A heter of a native chatzeris, or a heter of a place where you have just one person living there. But if you have a shaky heter, you have a situation where there's an empty place of a ger, and it's open for someone to move in, that's the kind of heter that does not continue the entire Shabbos. Okay, but now the Gemara comes back to say, what do we prove legabe the shayla of a Yerush, whether a Yerush could make bittul rishos? Katani miyas reisha, but it says in the first case of the brayso, oiser, that it asers, that you have over here a ger that died, and the Yid was machzik in his nechasim when on Shabbos itself, the Yid moved in on Shabbos itself, and we say that it's aser. It's a shaky heter, it's not a good heter, and therefore it's aser, you can't carry. Amay oiser, why is the fact that the Yid moved in the middle of Shabbos going to aser on everybody else? Nevatel, shouldn't we say that he should be like a Yerush, that has a koyach to now make bittul rishus? As Nachman said, a Yerush could make a bittul rishus. The same should apply to a person that's moving in over here in the middle of Shabbos. Answers the Gemara, you're right. My oiser, nami diktani. When it says oiser, it doesn't mean that it's aser without any eitzah. It means it's aser achi yevatel. It's going to be aser until you're going to do bittul rishus. But he could do bittul rishus. Okay, the Gemara repeated this answer twice. We had it over here, and over here yesterday we learned also another case, the Gemara said the same thing. When it says the Lashon Oiser, it means Aser until you do Bittul Rishos. Now the Gemara brings another answer. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Masnaise, these two braises where it says that it's Aser, that a Yerush can't do Bittul Rishos, Mani, who are those two braises going according to Beis Shammai? Goes according to Beis Shammai. The Omri we learned in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai says, Ein Bittul Rishos b'Shabbos. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Beis Shammai says, when could you give your rishos? When could you be mevatl rishos? Beis Shammai yomrim beid yom, only before Shabbos. Beis Hillel yomrim mishatechshach. Beis Hillel say only after Shabbos, even after Shabbos. That is mishatechshach. You don't have to do bittul rishos before Shabbos. So the braysos over here that says that it's oiser is following Beis Shammai's opinion. That says is this b'chlal never an inyan of bittul rishos on Shabbos itself. Now the Gemara explains the pshat and machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Omarula, my time at the Beis Hillel. What's the reason of Beis Hillel? So the Gemara brings an example of another case. Nase ka'oime klach etzel yafis. What's this case? So Rashi here brings the Gemara in Bab Metzia. We're talking about a person that tells someone to go and take truma for him, but he forgot to tell the person, the shliach that's taking truma for him, from which produce should he take the truma. And this guy goes and takes truma, and the balabais comes to see what he took truma from, and the balabais tells him, Klach etzel yafais, why didn't you go to even better produce? He's sort of saying it sarcastically. Why are you taking dafka from the such good things you gave for truma? So what do you see from this? The balabais doesn't want him to give from the very best truma. So over there the halacha is, you look in Rashi. Rashi says, Im yesh lo yafis mehen trumase truma. If there's taka better produce from what he gave for truma, so then the balabais is okay with this. He's just showing his intent that he didn't want him to give from the best produce truma. What's the connection to our case? What we see over here is even something that's not said explicitly. He appointed this shliach and he didn't tell him something explicitly what he should take from. But once we see now, we have a gili das of what he wants. So that gili das is good enough that the truma should take effect. Over here as well, Beis Hillel holds even this person that forgot to make an Erev Chatzeris before Shabbos, and that's why he has to do Bittul Rishus now. But the fact that he's being Mevatel Rishus now, in order for the other people to be able to carry, that really is Megala his das, that he lechatchila wanted to do this before Shabbos. If he's ready to give up now his Rishus for the other people to be able to carry here, so he's Megala das that he wants this Chatzah to be a place to be able to carry. So this really was started all from before Shabbos. So therefore, you're allowed to complete this and do it on Shabbos itself. That's the basis of Beis Hillel's Shitta. But the Gemara asks on this, Amar Abaye, Meis Nochri b'Shabbos. What happens in a case where a guy died on Shabbos? You can't say this. My klach etzel yafis ikka. You can't say that you have over here a gilui das that he really wanted to do this from before Shabbos. Because if a guy is living amongst them before Shabbos, so then you're not allowed to make any Erev Chatzeris b'chlal. He didn't have in mind to do this before Shabbos. It's a new situation that changed on Shabbos itself. So you can't say that what he's doing on Shabbos, he really already wanted to do before, and he forgot. It changed on Shabbos itself. Couldn't do it before Shabbos. So why? So in other words, we can't say that the koyach that you have to make this bittul reshus on Shabbos is based on the fact that we see that you wanted to do it before Shabbos. It must be that Beis Hillel holds that you're allowed to do this on Shabbos itself regardless. Ela sagt the Gemara, hacha b'haka miflagi. Here, the machlokes is as follows. Beishamai savri bittul reshus mikne reshusuhu. When you are mevatel your reshus, you're selling your reshus to the other people of the property. You're giving it over to them. Or mikne reshus b'Shabbos aser. To make a kinyan on Shabbos is also. This is considered to be like a proper kinyan, that you're selling them your reshus. Beis Hillel savri, Beis Hillel holds it's not a kinyan that you're selling them anything. It's taluki reshus ba'almohu. You're removing yourself. You're saying, I'm not going to be here. I'm taking away my rights of the chotzer. You're not selling them anything. You're just removing yourself. V'estaluki reshus b'Shabbos shapedami. To be mesalik yourself from a reshus, that's allowed. That's not considered to be a kinyan. That's allowed to be done on Shabbos. That's the machlokes. How do you define the inyan of bittul reshus? L'kula alma, it's not a proper kinyan. We had before, you don't have to say, you don't have to make a Maisa Kinyan. You do have to say, we did have before in the Gemara, you have to say, either the Gemara here before, you have to say, Reshusi Knuya Lach, the Gemara says, or Reshusi Mevuteles Lach, but Ein Tzarech Lezakais, the Gemara says, you don't have to make a Kinyan Chalipin. So, even according to Beis Shammai, there's no real Kinyan here. But nevertheless, even without a Maisa Kinyan, the very fact that you're saying something, which was a takana of Chazal, that it works like a Kinyan, is enough of a reason to ask it on the Shabbos. Mashenke Beis Hillel holds, not only you're not making a Maisa Kinyan, it's B'chalal not a Kinyan. You're just removing yourself in order for the other people to be able to carry it. But you're not selling them this property.
This that you take the Ger's house on Shabbos, that's mamash a Kinyan.
He's creating a Kinyan. He's moving in and he's being kind at the place.
The
So that kinyan of the ger is not the bittul reshus we're talking about. I'm not sure in that case where the person was kind of the nichsei ger whether he was allowed to do it on Shabbos or not. Let's say he wasn't allowed. The payil is kinda, huh?
Come again as the ger's guest.
But if he's a guest, then I don't know if he's going to ask on everybody else. No, if he's a guest, I don't know if he's going to ask on everyone else. Let's say he is kinda. Lama Zagani was kinda be'isser over there by the ger, but it's isser the rabbanon. The kinyan took effect. He was kinda. He's going to ask on everyone else regardless. Here we're talking about bittul reshus. Bittul reshus is this machlokes, but you do see from this Gemara, is taluki reshusa b'chlal, when you get to a case where a person is misalik himself on Shabbos, that it's allowed. Let's say to be meichel something, to someone else. I'm not making a kinyan. So in a case where you're not making a kinyan, so not only when you get to bittul reshus b'chlal, anytime you do a kinyan, which is not a real kinyan that I'm selling you something, I'm just being meichel you something, could be, according to this Gemara, it should be allowed. There's a discussion in Mefarshim about it.
Rashi says the dummy lemeka
Yeah, I explained that before. Even according to Beis Shammai, because even according to Beis Shammai, it's not a real kinyan.
It's like hefka.
Okay, maybe hefka. It's the right. So l'chayr, according to what the Gemara says over here, a person should be allowed to make something hefka on Shabbos. Not so pashut. Not so pashut.
Rashi says
Yeah. So again, according to Beis Shammai, even according to Beis Shammai, it's not a real kinyan. Okay, Lama Lana Denai Mishnah. Zok the Mishnah, Balabaye. So we move now to a different inyan. More or less, we're finished with the subject of bittul reshus. Now we go back to the inyan of Erev Chatzeres. Balabayis shaya shutif l'shcheinov. Balabayis that was a shutif together with his shcheinim. Now when it says shutif together with his shcheinim, it doesn't mean shutif as in for the purpose of Erev Chatzeres. It means pashut, he was a shutif. He was a partner with them. Lezeh b'yayin. So he's a shutif with one neighbor. They're living all in the same mavui. They have all chatzeres, and their chatzeres are open to one mavi. So if you have all of them open into one mavi, so they have to be mishtatif together in order to be able to carry in that mavi. So he's shutfis with them, with wine. To one neighbor on one side, he's a shutif with him with wine, or lezeh b'yayin, and he's a shutif with another neighbor also with wine. They all own wine together. Ein tzrichen la'arev. So now they don't have to make an erev chatzeres, or an shutif muvais in this case, if it's talking about a mavi. The whole purpose of making a shutfis is that they're living together. They have an ownership together, and therefore it's like one entity that's that's using this mavi. But if they anyways have a shutfis with wine that they own together, so the shutfis is there automatically. So they don't have to make an additional shittuf for the purpose of living together, for having the ownership together in the mavi. Lezeh b'yayin, if he has a shutfis with one person with wine, and he has a shutfis with another person with oil, then tzrichen la'arev. So then you do have to make an erev shittuf for the mavoi separately, because the shutfis of wine with one person and the oil of another person, that's not one shutfis. It's two different things. The Gemara will explain. It's in two different kelim. We'll see in a second. But if they own all wine together, so then they're all one entity. But if it's yayin and shemen, so that doesn't make them into one entity. They still have to make a shittuv for the mavi.
Are your partners in separate barrels of wine?
We'll see in the Gemara. Rab Shimon says, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh, whether the shutvis is that they own wine together, whether the shutvis is that they own wine and oil, ein tzrichen larav. Either way, this is good enough of a shutvis that they can rely on this, and you don't have to make an additional shittuf for the mavi. So now the Gemara explains. Marav ubekeli echad. When it says in the Mishnah that they are shutfim in the wine, the pshat is that they own the wine together in one keli. So because it's all in the same keli, that's when you say that it's good for the shittuf. If it wouldn't be in the same keli, it wouldn't work. All three own wine together in one barrel. They're shutfim in the wine in the same barrel.
It has to be there.
It
could be somewhere else.
No, of course not. It has to be there, of course. Just like every shittuf of a mavi has to be there, sure. Rashi here explains that even though we had before in the Gemara said that when it comes to making an Erev Chatzeres, it doesn't have to necessarily be in one keli. But that's only if you have food that they're collecting the food from all the people of the Chatzar and they put it into one basket and there's no more space in the basket, so they put it also in another basket. So then it's okay. But over here, if lichat chile, they have different barrels of wine that are designated for three different partners, so it never was in the same barrel. They never put it into the same barrel. So then it's even though we're partners, but it's in separate barrels, so it's not enough to create a shittu for the mavi. So it has to be bekeli yechad.
Only according to the Tanakh.
Let's see. Sagt the Gemara, Amarove, Deik and Nami. The raya for this is the distinction that the Tanakh makes. The Ktani, Lezeb yayin, lezeb shemen. If you're partners with two people, and with one you're partner with wine, and another one you're partner with oil, tzrichen la'arev. So then that's not a good partnership. You still have to make an shittu for the mavi. If in the reisha, when they're all partners and owning wine together, the wine is in the same keli, the seifa b'shnei kelim, and in the seifa it's speaking about that the wine and the oil are obviously in two different kelim. That's the way the Gemara understands now. So shaper, so you understand what the reason for the difference is. By wine, it's in one keli, that's a good shittuf. If it's in different kelim, it doesn't work. Ele yamret reisha b'shnei kelim. Even in the reisha, he's a shutuf with the two different neighbors in the wine, but they're in different barrels. The seifa b'shnei kelim, and in the seifa, when you're a shutuf with your two neighbors, and it's also wine in one barrel and the oil in another keli, mali yayin v'yayin, mali yayin v'shemen. What difference does it make if it's a wine and wine, and what difference is if it's a wine and oil? When you make a shituf from uvais and everyone brings their food to be mishtatif, you have to dafka bring the same food. You don't have to dafka bring the same food. So what's the problem if it's wine and oil that the shituf consists of? Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says no, it's not a raya. Yayin v'yayin roi la'arif. I can say the difference would be even if the wine of the two neighbors that are shutfim with you are on two different barrels, but it's something that's roi to mix together, even if it's not yet mixed together, but you could mix this wine together. The very fact that it could be mixed together is enough to consider it to be a proper shituf. Yayin v'shemen ein roi la'arif. Wine and oil, it's not only that it's now in separate kalim, but it's not made for shituf. It's not made to be mixed together, so therefore it's not going to work for the shituf muvais. So Abaye is saying that not necessarily does it bepoil have to be in the same keli. The very fact that it's roi to be ma'arev is good enough that it should be for a shituf muvais.
A regular shituf doesn't matter like what type of food people give them for food?
No, it doesn't have to be. Yeah, everyone can give whatever he gives. Doesn't have to. It's a machlokes about that in the Rishonim. It's a machlokes in the Rishonim whether Abaye is being doiche the raya from the Mishnah or he's actually arguing. Either way, we paskin like Rav. Then in this case it has to be b'kli echad. I mentioned before, Rashi says by a regular Erev it doesn't necessarily have to be b'kli echad. But over here, they didn't make this l'shem shittuf. They happen to be partners, and they want to use it now for the shittuf. Over here it has to be b'kli echad, according to Rav. No. Rab Shimon says, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh ein tzrichen la'arif. In both cases, whether it's wine and wine, whether it's wine and oil, either way you don't have to make another Erev. Fragt the Gemara, v'afilu lezeh b'yayin or lezeh b'shemen? What's the pshat? What's the reason of Rab Shimon? Even if one is you're shutuf with one with oil and with one with wine, what would be the reason why you don't have to make another Erev? L'chayre, in such a case where you lechatchila are shutfis not for the purpose of making the shituf in the mavoi, they happen to be shutfim, and this is oil, this is wine. There's no connection between them. So why should it work? Amar Rabbe says a completely different thing Rab Shimon is saying here. Hacha b'may askinon. You know what this is talking about? B'chatzer shebein shnei mavoyos. You have two mavois, and between the two mavois there's a chatzer. And now the question is, this mavi in between over here, so this person is a shutif with two people from both sides. For Rab Shimon l'taimei, this goes back to something that we learned before, and Rab Shimon is following his opinion. What is this? The Tanan. We learned before, Rab Shimon said, Rab Shimon, lemad davadoime l'shalosh chatzeres hapsuchos zu l'zu. What happens in a case when you have three chatzeres that have a door in between them? They're open to one another. You have three chatzeres side by side, and these three chatzeres have an opening to the Reshus HaRabim, and they also have a door in between that they're open to one another. Irvu shtayim achitzainos ima emtzois. The two outer chatzeres made an eruv with the inner, with the middle chatzer. He muteres iman. So the person of the middle chatzer that made an eruv with them is allowed to carry to the outer chatzeres. And vehein mutaren ima. And the people of the outer chatzeres are allowed to carry to the middle chatzer. Shtayim achitzainos asure zu imzu. But the two people of the outer chatzeres are not allowed to carry to each other. You're not allowed to carry all the way through from one to another, from one end to the other, because they didn't make an eruv chatzeres with each other. They only made an eruv chatzeres with the middle one. So the Gemara is applying the same thing over here, b'negei to our case. We're talking about a person, he's a shutuf with one side, he's a shutuf with wine. With the other side, he's a shutuf with oil. So with one side, he has a shituf, a good shituf with wine, the shutuf and wine, in one keli. He's a shutuf with the other side with oil. And that's a good shituf. So it's two separate shutfusim that he has for one mavi on one side and one mavi on another side. But it's not one big shituf between all three of them that you can carry from one end to the other. That's what Rab Shimon was saying over here. If you remember, we learned this before. The Chachamim disagree with Rab Shimon, and the Chachamim were geyser. Chachamim said that we're geyser, that if you're going to allow the outer one from the left and the outer one from the right to carry to the middle one, they might come to end up carrying from one end to the other. So Chachamim said that we can't rely on this eruv even halfway, that the outer ones could carry with the middle one. But Rab Shimon holds that no, if you have two separate eruvs with the outer chatzeres, it works for each one separately. So that's the only thing that Rab Shimon meant of it. Rab Shimon never meant to say that this is going to be a full-fledged eruv chatzeres for everybody together. Abaye asks on this pshat, midami, how could you compare what Rab Shimon said there and apply it to the lashon of our Mishnah? Hasam ketani, there the lashon is shtayim achitzainis asuros zu imzu. It clearly says that the two outer chatzeres are also to carry with one another. Hacha ketani ein tzrichin la'arev klal. Over here it says ein tzrichin la'arev. You don't have to make an eruv b'chlal, so it's mashma klal. You don't have to make any eruv. That they're shutfim with oil and with wine, it's mashma that it's 100% a good eruv, not a eruv just with the outer chatzeres or the outer mavois. So the Gemara says, "My ein tzrichin la'arev." So no, it says no. We could teach in our Mishnah as well. It doesn't say the word klal in our Mishnah. When it says ein tzrichin la'arev, what it means is shchenim bahadi balabayis. The two people from the outer mavois, they don't have to make an eruv with the balabayis that's in the middle. The two shchenim that are on the outer sides, they're not shutfim with each other in the same thing. They're not shutfim with wine or with oil. They're not shutfim in the same thing. They will have to make another eruv chatzeres. So this is one pshat in the Mishnah here. Whose pshat was this over here? This was Rabbe's pshat. That it's talking about a whole different story, b'negei to a case where you have three people that are separate and it's taken not a full eruv chatzeres. Rav Yosef Amar, Rav Yosef says, no. Rabbanon, Rab Shimon, Rabbanon, beplukte Rab Yechanan ben Nuri, Rabbanon kamifliki. The whole machlokes over here, whether only if they're shutfim in wine together, does it work? Or even if they're shutfim with wine and oil, it also works. This is a machlokes, the same machlokes that we find in another place between Rab Shimon and Rabbanon. Between Rab Yechanan ben Nuri and the Rabbanon. The Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Shemen, shetzafal gabe yayin. If you have oil that's floating on top of wine, so the oil and the wine are together in one keli. The nagat tful yaim b'shemen. The tful yaim touched oil. Loi pasal el shemen bilvad. So what happens by oil and wine, of course, is that the oil will flow on the top and the yayin will be on the bottom. So if you touched only the oil, the yayin does not become tummy because it's not considered to be a chibur. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri says, no, shneyen chiburin zeh lezeh. It's considered to be chiburin, even though the oil always remains separated from the wine. The oil flows on top of the wine, but they're in the same keli, they're touching each other, and it's a chibur zeh lezeh. So we see over here machlokes when get to oil and wine in the same keli. Do I say that it's like two separate entities and the oil becomes tamei because it's only a tful yom? The case over here is a tful yom, so the oil becomes tamei and not the wine. Or do I say that no, it's like one entity, and therefore it all becomes tamei? So we apply the same thing over here. Rabbanon kirabbanon. Rabbanon over here that say that you can make an eirov only with wine, and not if there are shutfim with wine and oil, holds that wine and oil are two different entities, and therefore even if you mix them together and they're shutfim and it's in the same barrel, it's in the same keli, it doesn't matter, it doesn't help, it's still considered to be two different entities. But Rab Shimon, Rab Yechanan ben Nuri. Rab Shimon holds like Rab Yechanan ben Nuri that the oil and the wine, if they're in the same keli, they're like one entity, and therefore the shutfis works for the shittuf of the mavi, becomes like one thing. That's what the machlokes is based on. Sagt Gemara weiter, Tanya, we learned in a... Yeah, or going back to what, who was it before? Abaya. Abaya said before that the very fact that it's roi to be in one keli, so the same machlokes would apply. If you would put it into one keli, would it be considered to be one entity or not? Now the Gemara brings a third opinion, which was more machmer. Tanya in a Braisa we learned, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tado Yoime. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh tzrichin la'arev. Whether they had a shutfis with oil and wine, but even if they had a shutfis that they all owned wine together, still you have to make another eirov. You can't rely on this shutfis for the shittuf of the mavi. Frekt the Gemara, v'afilu lezeh b'yayin, lezeh b'yayin. Even if they're all shutfim together in wine, in one barrel, they all own wine together, why can't you rely on that? What's the problem? Rabbi explains, in a case where each person came with his jug of wine and they all poured it into the same barrel, everybody's going to agree that that's a perfect eirov. Now they have all wine together in one barrel, so there's no reason why you can't rely on that for the eirov. Ki pligi, the case over here, the argument is, not everyone brought their own wine and then mixed it into a barrel. Case is, they lechatchila went and bought a barrel of wine, and each one paid their part. So now, what's the machlekes? What's the problem? Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi says, "Ein breida." This was never a situation where it was clarified which part is mine, which part is yours, which part is yours. We were mishtatev b'shutvis. We all paid money for this. We all participated with the money in this wine, but there was never a chelik that was mine, a chelik that was yours, and a chelik that was someone else. It's all a chatchila mixed in together. Rabbeinu Chananel here says that the only way an eid of chatzeris works is that it has to be something. The lashon of Rabbeinu Chananel here is v'lo nikra eidov ela dahavi yidia v'nis'arav achshav. The concept of an eidov is I bring my food and I participate, and each person has to bring their food to participate. It has to be a shittuf, an actual food that each person is bringing and participating. Over here, what are they participating with? Money. Each one brought money to buy this barrel of wine. It was never bereded. It wasn't never clarified what's mine, what's yours. So therefore, this is not b'chlal, not usable for the concept of shittuf mavais. That's Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi's shittah. And Rabbanan hold, Rabbanan savri yesh bereded. Rabbanan say that because each one is paying their percent, it's as if we say, this part is yours, another part of the barrel is his. It's as if each one brought their chelik for the shittuf mavais. Taisvis, the Rishonim all point out over here that this lashon the Gemara uses, yesh breida, ein breida, even though we had the whole sugi before about yesh breida and ein breida, it's a different concept. It's not the same thing. Usually the lashon of yesh breida and ein breida is talking about a situation where lechatchila something was not clear, and then later on it becomes clarified, and the question is, do I say breida lemafreya? That I say that the lemafreya, this is what was going to happen. Over here, we're not talking about a lemafreya, b'chlal. We're talking about when you buy, should I say that it's considered to be just a shutvis with money, and it was never clarified that this part of the barrel is yours and this is yours, and therefore there is no eid of here, b'chlal? Or should I say that no, because each one pays their percent, I consider it as if the bottom third of the barrel is yours, the middle third is yours, and the top third is yours. So it's talking about the present. We're not talking about a lemafreya situation.
It will never be clarified.
Correct. Correct. Exactly. So there's no concept of later it's going to be clarified lemafreya. No, exactly. The shaila is now when they pay, do I say it's as if it's already divided for each one of them? That's his pshat in the machlekes. Rav Yosef says a whole different pshat than what Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi was saying here. Rav Yosef Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi v'Rabbanon b'soimchin al shituf b'mokim eruv kamiflagi. What they're really arguing about is, could you rely on a shituf on a mavoi in the place where you also need an eruv for a chatzar? When you have a mavoi and chatzeres, so really you have to make for the chatzar that has a few houses opened into the same chatzar, you have to make an eruv chatzeres. If you have a few chatzeres that are opened into one mavoi, you have to, all the people of the chatzeres have to be mishtatif in the mavoi, right? So the question is, what if they forgot to make an eruv chatzeres, but they did make a shutfus for the mavoi? Could I rely on the shutfus of the mavoi without the eruv chatzeres? That's what they're arguing on. The Marsavar, the Tana of the Mishnah that argues on Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi, he holds ein seimchen. You can't rely on this. Marsavar, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi. Again, let me go back again. Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi, that is. Marsavar, Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi holds ein seimchen. You can't rely. That's what he really meant when he said echad zeh ve'echad zeh tzrichen la'arev, that you have to make an eruv. The fact that they have a shitta for the mavoi is not good enough. You still have to make an eruv chatzeres. Umar sovar seimchen. And the Tana of our Mishnah holds that you could rely on this. Now, as we'll see in the Hemshech of the Gemara, what this is based on is only when it comes to a shituf of a mavoi could you use wine as a shituf for a mavoi. You can't use wine as a shituf for an eruv chatzeres. For an eruv chatzeres, you have to have pas. Right? So therefore, as the Gemara will say over here in the Hemshech. So therefore over here, if they made the shituf with wine, so therefore the shituf is only benegayet to the mavoi. So what Rav Eliezer ben Tadoi is saying is, the shituf for the mavoi is perfect, but the problem is he didn't make a proper eruv for the chatzeres. So tzrichen la'arev, you still have to make the eruv for the chatzar.
It sounds like you're saying lechatchila.
Huh?
At the Tanakh or our Mishnah would be holding lechatchila.
That what?
You don't have to marry.
Maybe. I don't know. Second. Okay, let's see the Hemshech of the Gemara. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said, Mino aminala. How do I know that this is the basis of the machlekes? That they have a shituf for the mavoi, and the question is whether that works for the chatzar as well. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav halacha Rab Meir. He said in the name of Rav that we paskin like Rab Meir. What's the psak of like Rab Meir? The din of Rab Meir was that if you made a shituf for the mavoi, it doesn't work for the chatzar. The Gemara is soon going to quote the brais of Rab Meir. Rav Bruna Amar Rav halacha Rab Eliezer ben Tadoi. And another Tana said in the name, or another Amayra said in the name of Rav, that we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi. My time, why in both of these cases did Rav paskin like a yochid, like Rab Meir, against the Chachamim, and over here he's paskining like Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi against the Chachamim? Isn't the reason Lav mishum dechat taimahu? Because both Rab Meir and Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi both held the same thing. They both held that if you have a shitta for the mavoi, and you did not make an eruv chatzeres, you can't rely on that. You have to separately make an eruv chatzeres. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye said to him, V'icha taimuhu, and if it's both based on the same reason, Tarti hilchas lamali. So then why did Rav have to paskin twice like Rab Meir and like Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi? It's the same point. And for the Gemara, kamashmalon, the reason why he paskin twice, this is what he's teaching me, the loy of dinon kitrei chumri be'erevin. He's telling you that when you have two chumris of one tana by Eiruvin, you don't paskin like that tana that says two chumris. The Gemara is going to explain that Rab Meir shitta is based on two chumris. We're going to see in the Hemshech of the Gemara. There's two chumras that Rab Meir shitta is based on. So he didn't want to just paskin like Rab Meir, because if he would paskin just like Rab Meir, it would come out that there's two chumras. So therefore he paskin like Rab Meir one chumra, and then he paskin like Rab Eliezer ben Tadoi another chumra. So this teaches you Bechlal. This goes back to our klal that we had before more than once. Benegayet to Eiruvin, that since Eiruvin is midrabanan, so therefore we're mekel. So even when you do paskin the chumrah, but you don't paskin like one tana which has two chumras. So therefore you paskin separately like Rabbi Eliezer ben Tadoi and like Rab Meir. Okay, in the Hemshech of the Gemara, it's going to bring up what Rab Meir said and where you see the two chumras of Rab Meir. Continues into the next one. We'll learn it in Mitzvah tomorrow.